Alright, if you are preparing for the CTET examination, let's be honest. The English pedagogy section often feels confusing. It's not about memorizing grammar rules, it's about understanding how language actually works in a real classroom. So, in this explainer, we are going to clear some common misunderstandings that confuse many students so that you can enter the exam with confidence and answer questions correctly. First, we will start with a very common belief about pure language. Then we will clearly understand the difference between code mixing and code switching, a topic CTET frequently asks questions from. After that, we will move to the basic units of language, and finally, we will discuss one of the most important concepts in English pedagogy, the difference between grammatically correct sentences and meaningful sentences. But before we begin, we need a small change in our thinking. CTET is not trying to confuse you with difficult grammar rules or promote the idea of perfect English. Instead, CTET checks whether you understand the real nature of language in a multilingual classroom. So, this brings us to an important question: is pure English really the goal? Should teachers correct students every time they mix languages? For many of us, the answer has always been yes. But modern pedagogy questions this idea. Many teachers believe that mixing languages is wrong. They feel it's a mistake that must be corrected. However, modern pedagogy, and especially the CTET framework, looks at this very differently. It looks at language in a practical and realistic way. So, if mixing languages is not an error, then what is it? This takes us to two very important concepts: code mixing and code switching. CTET wants teachers to see these not as mistakes but as useful classroom strategies. Let us first understand code mixing. Code mixing means using words from two or more languages within the same sentence. For example, you have heard this many times in Indian classrooms. Today ka lecture very important hai. Here, English and Hindi words are used together in one sentence. This is code mixing. Why is this acceptable? Because it is natural. This is how people normally speak in multilingual communities. It helps students express their ideas even when they do not know a word in one language. This increases confidence. So, from a pedagogical point of view, code mixing should not be discouraged. Now, let us move to code switching. The key idea here is shift. Code switching doesn't happen inside one sentence. Instead, it involves a complete change from one language to another or from one style of speaking to another. For example, a teacher explains a concept in English. Then, seeing that students are confused, the teacher explains the same idea again fully in Hindi. This complete shift from English to Hindi is called code switching. It's a conscious teaching strategy used to support understanding. Let us make this very clear with an example. Think of code mixing like mixing fruits in a blender. Everything comes together in one place. But code switching is like drinking water first, then switching to juice. One ends, the other begins. Here is an important CTET trap you must remember. If a teacher speaks only English but switches from formal English to informal English, this is also code switching. So, code switching is not only about changing languages. It can also be about changing styles or registers within the same language. Now, let us move to the theoretical side of language. To understand pedagogy properly, we must understand the basic units of language. We start with the smallest unit, the phoneme. A phoneme is the smallest unit of sound. By itself, it has no meaning. For example, the sounds pa and ba do not mean anything on their own. But changing one sound can change the word completely. Bat becomes bat. This shows that phonemes help distinguish words. Next comes the morpheme. A morpheme is the smallest unit of meaning. Take the word unhappy. It has two parts. Happy carries meaning. The prefix un also carries meaning, but it expresses negation. So, morphemes combine to create meaning. Now we come to one of the most important CTET concepts, the difference between grammar and meaning. First, syntax. Syntax refers to sentence structure and word order. She eats apples is correct. Apples she eats is not standard English. Now, look at this sentence carefully. Madam drives a bicycle. This is a famous CTET example. Is the grammar correct? Yes. Subject, verb, object, everything is in the correct order. But does it make sense? No, not at all. You do not drive a bicycle, you ride it. Alright? So, the problem here is not grammar, the problem is meaning. This shows the difference between syntax and semantics. Syntax is about structure, semantics is about meaning. So remember this framework. Phoneme is related to sound, morpheme is related to meaning, syntax is about structure, and semantics is about sense. This is exactly how CTET wants you to think. So think about this question. When a child makes a mistake, do you focus only on grammar? Or do you try to understand what the child is trying to say? When teachers focus on meaning before structure, learning becomes more supportive and effective.